All right, hello. Hope everyone is doing well. I know it is kind of different going outside nowadays with the coronavirus and everything. So I figure why not, since I have so much time, why not make something that I can use to help people towards learning something new if they have enough time. I always like the idea of education being accessible to everyone. I feel like just seeing someone do it in person, and I don't want to say like it's super easy, but like it is doable for everyone. I don't want it to be intimidating, and that's what I hope this little tutorial will accomplish. So anyways, I'm going to be creating a canvas size on Photoshop. I'm using the newest version, Photoshop CC, I believe. Really, CS6 works. Any there's a bunch of also free programs that you can use as well. Um, there's a thing called Krita. There's Autodesk Sketchbook Pro, which will work too. But I'm just gonna name this tutorial one for now because it's just whatever. I just like to name it to begin with. So what I want to go over real quick is just the basics, really. A lot of times people will ask me, well, what do you use? And it's pretty simple. I just use a laptop that has well, okay, so for Photoshop, you want to have at least 8 gigabytes of RAM. My laptop, I wanted to make sure it has an Intel Core 7 and 16 gigabytes. That way I knew it wouldn't slow down too much when I draw. For the canvas size, I usually do 20 by 20 inches, but because I'm recording, it tends to really lag down my laptop for some reason. So I'm doing 10 inches in hopes that it won't lag and crash like last time. And for brushes, I get asked a lot what kind of brushes I use. I used to use a default brush, which worked perfectly fine, honestly. But then I got a basic brush set from user Sakimi-chan, who is like I have too many things open. One of the most prominent digital artists you will see. She does a lot of like pinup work, and honestly, really, really beautiful work. Like there's so much detail. It's so let's see. As you can tell, there's very how do you say it? Sensual, I suppose. But she has a lot of details. Anyways, I use her brush. You can find it online. You can buy it for probably like a few bucks. I don't believe it's much at all. But for now, just to show that the brush is not that big of a deal, I'm just going to go ahead and use a basic brush just to show that again, it's kind of less about the brush you use at the start because that's not going to be the factor in what creates, you know, when you start out, chances are you're gonna have to play around with it, and I don't think it's good to get too caught up in what tools you use, basically. Oh, that's kind of cool. I believe this is this should be preloaded brush. Um, but for now, I'm just gonna use a basic soft brush just to keep it super, super simple. So as you can see, I start with a toned gray background. It just helps me use my values. It helps me keep an idea of like what's too bright, what's too dark. It helps me level out what I want to see. Just in general, you've probably seen a lot of sketchbooks that have like a toned down surface, and it's super helpful. Everything about art is about context, where everything is next to each other, what they call like color relation and value relations and everything like that. That might not be like the perfect term, but um, so let's see. And I also always use, okay, some things I always use in Photoshop is I always use a navigator, which you can open up through Windows and then find navigator and this will pop up. Seeing an icon of what you're drawing helps you see it in a different perspective. Another thing I always do is I always go through image rotation, flip horizontally, and just flipping it horizontally, even with traditional art, it helps you see it from a different angle and helps you see what looks wonky. So right now I'm just going to use a nice little orange tone, a little peachy color, I suppose. All right, and this is kind of just how I start off most of my face drawings, portraits. I guess they're portraits that I don't really, they're not of anyone specific, so I feel like portraits is usually for someone who's real, but we'll just start with the normal face that I'll usually start out with. And usually, as you can tell, I work in shapes. I don't mind sketches at all, and again, like everything I talk about is just my personal experience. Everyone has their own way. I don't want to be like, this is the way you have to do it. This is the style you must have. No, absolutely not. There is so many ways you can do it, do art in general for anything really. But for me, I personally am a strong believer for myself in using shapes and kind of just blocking in the colors. And the reason why I find this to be so important for me is because I'm a very visual person, and when I see shapes, I can tell what looks right and what looks wrong. Whereas when we use sketches and line art, it's a lot more difficult to find out what looks off because our brains aren't filling in the lines, the shape. We don't see shapes. and line art, and that's how we observe the world. So when we draw with shapes, it helps you kind of recognize, okay, this is what looks natural, this is what doesn't. It helps you like just have more of an idea of why some, just as you're like developing a figure, like what looks good, what doesn't, how can you fix it. And I will say one thing for sure with digital art is I wanted to say how important it is to realize that digital art is just a medium. And by that I mean it's not a magic wand. It's not going to solve all your problems. It's kind of like when someone does oil paint for the first time and they haven't had any experience with art in general. And they just get oil paints, really expensive oil paints. And basically, I knew someone who spent like 300 in really expensive oil paints, but that didn't actually help them create art because what they ended up doing is getting frustrated that it wasn't working out the way they wanted to because it is just a tool. There's a lot of like, as everything really, you just have to keep learning and just don't expect digital art basically to be a magic wand, if that makes sense. So as you can tell, my face is way too big. I always do this. I always make the faces too big. Um, Going through to the right here, what is it called? I don't know, the cursor over there. You can just drag it. When I hold shift, it lets me keep the ratio the same. If I don't hold shift, I can like do this, whatever. But for now, I'm just gonna shrink it down a little bit just to make it more manageable on how I draw. And so, yeah. Anyways, what I was saying was a lot of what I know when I do digital art is something I learned in traditional art, if that makes sense. So basically, your art skill, I guess is how to say it, is transferable through mediums. So if you're really good at doing portraits with watercolor, chances are you will be decent at digital art portraits. Though of course everyone has to practice in like a learning curve. That's another thing, because it's a different medium, there is a bit of a learning process of like understanding and feeling comfortable. And again, I hope this makes people comfortable and less like nervous when they draw, because it's really important to not be too like intimidated, which I mean I am all the time. It's totally understandable, but don't let that hold you back, I suppose. All right, so I'm locking it in. So as you can tell, I'm doing a phase, as I've said before. And a lot of what I learned to do by doing a lot of what I know about faces is what I've learned from when I did a figure drawing class. I had a great professor who told me like the ratios and everything, and which are easier to see when you're blocking in shapes again. So I don't want to go in depth on like every single ratio there is to talk about, like where the eye is supposed to be, like they're supposed to be like in the half of the top of the head to the chin. A lot of that stuff I'm not going to talk about right now because I'm not going to teach like a full blown art course right now because I don't have the credibilities, and honestly I don't want to teach people the wrong things because I don't honestly, a lot of what I do I just don't know. I really don't. I have no idea. Um, for digital art, for art in general, I did digital art on my own for a long time. And it was just practicing and looking at references and listening to feedback that I got from my siblings, from random people. And that really helped me personally. And then, ooh, shading. Okay, so right now we have a creepy skinhead who looks like they probably hate Asians during this time. So we're going to add some more friendly features. And chances are, since I'm doing a portrait, I'll talk about what I'm doing anyways. But this triangle right here, actually, fun fact, is referred to as the Rembrandt triangle. I don't know if you know who Rembrandt is. I'm not going to spell this right. Rembrandt painting. I'm not spelling that right at all. Let's see. So, okay, it auto-corrected for me. So Rembrandt is known for his little triangle. Let's see, here we go. See, he's got like a little lighting triangle. As you can tell in a lot of my artwork. Little triangle right here. You will notice that I do this a lot too. And it just a fun fact. You don't have to do it for everything either. And sometimes you might not have it at all. Like if you're doing this much shading and blah, blah, blah. But the nice thing about digital art is that there's so much exploring and learning. And you have so much flexibility in having pretty much like an endless supply of resources, if that makes sense. You can go online to find references. You will not run out of paint. All you need really is a laptop, a tablet, and a way to charge. And yeah, you don't have to worry about wasting material, which is a huge concern I had whenever I did like expensive art, quote unquote expensive art. It was like, for oil paint, I was always so hesitant. For a lot of my painting, I use really thin painting because I always get like anxious about using material. But for this, there's no worries. And I can always, if I make a mistake, it's no worries. There's always the undo, there's always erasing, there's always the layers. I can probably get into layers a bit later. All right, let's see. So we got kind of the form of this person. I haven't decided. I think right now I'm getting like the vibe that they're a girl. So we're just gonna go with girl right now. Let's flip horizontally, see what's wacky. Okay, her neck is a little wacky right here. And again, like flipping it, I cannot recommend it enough. Like it helps me so much. Neck should be up here. Okay. All right, let's add a little bit more detail. And it's actually kind of funny though, because I rarely ever use this soft round tool, but I'm actually not hating it. Okay, so one thing I do when I go darker is instead of going through the exact hue and just going down, what I like to do is I go to a different hue and then go down. This adds variety in the colors. It makes it a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more colorful. And it just adds a lot of depth, which is something I highly recommend. When you go darker, make sure to go into a different color and darker. If that makes sense. All right. And one thing I will say though is whenever I start a painting, there's always this doubt of like, ooh, it's not looking good. Honestly, just push through it. Like, if you can, confidence with anything is something that you have to kind of practice with, if that makes sense. And it's kind of just something you have to like kind of have trust in yourself that, hey, you know what? It might not look good now, but I can make it look good if I just keep on working on it. And sometimes, you know, there are times when sometimes some pieces just don't work out at all, and that's okay too. But anyways, okay. Oh, I gave her some big ol' eyes. Here we go. Okay. And let's see, right now I'm just, in my head, I'm thinking about like spacing issues. Like, does it look like there could be an eye in between her eyes right now? And for the most part, I would say yes. So far, so good. I'll put that a little light right here to the eye. One thing though that I have, okay, funny story. I was kind of just, you know, loafing around on the internet, just looking into random stuff, and I found an article about Ted Cruz, who, you know, shout out to Texas, Ted Cruz. You know, I'm not a huge fan. And anyways, I found an article about what makes Ted Cruz so unlikable, or like visually unlikable. You can like his policy, that's okay. I like some of his stuff too, because I think you should always find one thing you like and dislike about a politician. But anyways, I can talk about politics forever, even though I know nothing about politics. But anyways, one thing about Ted Cruz that this article talked about was how he is just naturally visually unlikable, and it's because of two things. One is because he lacks crow's feet, and by that I don't mean like the crow feet. I mean the little crease next to someone's eye, which they develop from smiling a lot. When someone smiles, they kind of like their eyes kind of tighten, and this crease, see, kind of like that. Like, see, you can kind of just tell they're grinning, right? And then you can just like, okay, that looks actually kind of creepy. But anyways, crow's feet is right here. There's a little indent right there, and that is something I always add to my portraits to make them look likable. Because I really want someone. I feel like in order for a person to really feel the portrait, they have to be likable. And to do that, crow's feet, which apparently Ted Cruz lacks. But anyways, he grew a beard, so he looks a little bit more likable in my opinion. I support the beard look, by the way. Yes, it's a good look on him. Anyways, let's see. Another thing was also that the article also said that he's unlikable because he has a very round face. But anyways, I think he can be likable with or without a round face. I have a round face. I have a very round face. It makes me look like I'm 12. But you know what? That's life. I'm not going to get anything to suck out my fat, so I'm just going to have to deal with it, I suppose. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. I'm going to ramble a lot. Alright, so let's see. So crow's feet, really important. Let's see. I have to add a little glimmer on the eyes. Oops. Okay. And as you can tell, one thing I'm doing a lot is I'm doing Alt, which is like right now, which is which is a color dropping tool just to pick up. That's how I blend. A lot of people ask me how do you blend. That's pretty much it. It's just um, yeah, just picking up the in-between color and just like kind of blending it together. Another thing you can do is you can add the pressure on the opacity. That way when you, oh, hello, nothing's happening. Oh wait, no, here we go. That way when you push harder, it gets darker, but when you go push lighter, it gets lighter. That also helps with the blending a lot. Okay, let's see what we got over here. And this is basically all that I do in my artwork. It's just going back and forth. It's nothing too fancy at all, honestly. It's really just the same process when I do traditional art. It's the same process when I do any kind of painting. It's kind of just pushing in and out and adding more details where I can find them, changing kind of here and there. And I'm sure other people do it differently. This is just my way of doing it, and any way you find comfortable, totally valid. Another thing is color. So when I do skin tones, I always like to add a lot of yellows, like this color right here. So I will go into like kind of the yellow territory, make it gray, and that just adds a really nice. It adds maybe not this color right now, but it kind of adds. It pushes the warm color. So using cool colors, you're kind of pushing out the redness of the skin tone. And it kind of makes it more three-dimensional too. See what I mean? I like to add some red around the eyes and the nose and the cheeks. That's a little bit too red. And that is just to add kind of like, the redness is seen as like sensitivity, someone's like blushing or something. I think it adds like a nice touch to make someone look kind of likable. Anyways, this is looking nothing like my normal portraits, but I think it's because of the brush. So I guess, yeah, the brush does have an impact, that's for sure. But I want to show that I don't want people to get too caught up in it either, which is why I'm doing this. So hopefully you understand that it is really important, but if you can't find something immediately that you love, don't get too caught up in it too, if that makes sense. Right now, she does look a little creepy, and I think it's her lack of hair. Okay, again, we were trying to avoid skinhead racist Nazis, so let's add some hair. Ooh, she looks kind of creepy. Okay, right about now is usually when I get like worried. I'm like, oh, this is not looking too great. She's not looking too hot. Like, this is not a good look for her. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, she looks like a creepy version of Caillou right now, actually. So yeah, I guess I take it back. I think for the most part, the default Photoshop will have a textured brush. I guess I would use that instead of this round brush because it's been a while and I didn't realize how much I wouldn't like the way it looks, because it just has a very unrealistic, unnatural look, if that makes sense. Like you're just like, oh, she doesn't look real, and that makes it hard for you to like kind of like empathize. It's okay. We'll see. We'll see if I can pull it around again. A lot of times it's just pushing through that initial doubt of like, can I do this? Will it work? Or am I making something awful? I guess we will find out, really. Alright, so right about now is when I'm getting close to being finished with this portrait, I think. Um, let's see. I don't know if there's anything else I want to touch on. Right now, everything is on one layer. I can talk about more about layers another time, but it's really up to you on what you find is the most convenient way, in a way. Some people are more organized with layers. Some people are less organized with more layers. It also really depends on what I'm doing. A lot of times I will use a layer if I am doing a background, a foreground. Sometimes I'll make the clothes a different layer because I tend to draw in the clothes after the fact, as you can tell, because it helps you see like the form a little bit better. Um, and yeah, I mean, as you can tell, it's just a lot of going back and forth, adding some details here, some details there. One thing personally I always try to do is I try to never. One thing, I guess, if you want to add more detail to something, always add more variation of colors. For instance, we got some yellows, some reds, some oranges here, some a lot of cool grays here. Whereas for the shirt, we're not really too worried about like what's over here, so I'm gonna put less detail here. And well, we can do like something like that, just to add more texture or something. Um, but yeah, I think this is about it. I hope I covered anything. I'm like so worried that I'm forgetting something that people really want to know about. But I hope I covered everything. If not, feel free to let me know. I'll try to touch up on it eventually. But yeah, this is pretty much my process. Again, it's really nothing too. I don't want to say it's too complicated. Right now I'm not using a reference, but I definitely recommend it if you are just starting out with portraits, or if you're still learning about faces. I'm sure there's a bunch of YouTube videos out there that'll help you with faces and structures and everything like that. But this is just a way of showing like how I do digital art, the way I kind of think things through, how I start, and just to hopefully encourage you that it's really nothing too complicated, really. Yeah. And I will say I was not a huge fan of this textureless round brush at first, but it's not, it's okay. She doesn't look too much like a Barbie, I don't think so. That was like my main one concern, so. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed this video and stay safe.